Hey friends, Miss Manning here. I hope you're ready to read chapter 5 of Leroy Ninker, Saddles Up. Yeah, okay, let's just take a quick little sneak peek of what we saw in chapter 4. We were at the Garden Glen Apartments, and Leroy was trying to fit Maybelline into Unit 12. But we know that wasn't working. So he had to remember the next thing that Patty Lamarck said. Maybelline likes a lot of grub. So his plan, make some grub, get in the door later. Let's see what happens. Chapter 5. Leroy Ninker went into the kitchen of Unit 12. He opened the refrigerator and looked inside. Leroy had viewed many Westerns at the Bugeaud Drive-In Theater. He had seen a great deal of purple mountains and wide open plains. He had watched cowboys battling injustices and crossing rivers and eating beans. But he could not recall one movie where a cowboy said out loud exactly what it was he was feeding to his horse. "Hey," said Leroy. He lifted up his hat and scratched his head. "Oats?" But he didn't have any hay, and he didn't have any oats. "Dang flibberit," said Leroy Ninker. Outside of Unit 12, Maybelline let out a long, loud whiny that had a question mark on the end of it. "Okay," Leroy shouted to the horse. "I'm making you some grub. Yippee-i-oh." Leroy grabbed a big pot and filled it with water. He turned the heat on high. He filled another pot with tomato sauce. Patty Lamarck had said nothing about whether or not Maybelline liked spaghetti, but didn't everyone like spaghetti? After Leroy Ninker added the noodles to the pot, he went outside and leaned up against his horse. Her flank was very warm. She was an extremely comforting horse to lean against. Maybelline turned her head and looked at Leroy. And then she put her nose up in the air and sniffed. "That's right," said Leroy. "I am cooking you some grub." Maybelline whined. "It's spaghetti," said Leroy. "I hope you like spaghetti." It turned out that Maybelline did like spaghetti. She liked spaghetti a lot. The horse ate the first pot of noodles in a single gigantic gulp. Whoop. As far as Leroy could tell, she didn't even bother to chew. When she was done, Maybelline lifted her head from the pot and looked at Leroy in a meaningful way. Leroy said, "Yippee-i-oh," and he went running back into Unit 12 with the empty pot and started boiling more water. He opened another jar of tomato sauce. He made a second pot of spaghetti. After that, he made a third pot of spaghetti. By the time Maybelline was done eating, the stars were shining in the sky and the moon was looking down. And there was not one noodle of spaghetti left in Unit 12. Leroy Ninker was very tired. He leaned against his horse and looked up at the stars. But when he closed his eyes, what he saw was Patty Lamarck. Her face was as big as the moon, and her mouth was opening and closing, and opening and closing. Leroy knew exactly what she was saying. Patty Lamarck was reciting item 3. Maybelline, said Leroy. Maybelline turned and put her nose in Leroy's face. I have remembered item 3, said Leroy Ninker. Item 3 is that you are the kind of horse who gets lonesome quick. Maybelline nickered. But you cannot fit inside Unit 12, said Leroy. Maybelline shook her head. Okay then, said Leroy. I will stay here with you. He took off his boots. He removed his lasso. He loosened his belt. And then he lay down at Maybelline's feet. He put his hat over his eyes. He sighed a happy sigh. Oh, I have made a lot of mistakes in my life, said Leroy Ninker from underneath his hat. I have done some things that I wish I had not done. I have taken some wrong turns. There was a long silence. Leroy moved his hat and looked up at Maybelline. The horse looked down at him. She was listening. There was a time in my life when I was a thief, said Leroy. I am now reformed. I hope you don't judge me, Maybelline, because I truly am a changed man. Maybelline let out a small chuff of air. Oh, Maybelline, said Leroy, you are my horse. For me, you shine brighter than every star and every planet. You shine brighter than all the universe's moons and suns. There are not enough yippee-i-os to describe you. Maybelline, I love you. Leroy Ninker had never imagined that he could string so many words together at once. It was the longest speech of his life. He looked up at Maybelline and she looked down at him. Leroy's cheeks felt hot. He lowered his hat so that it covered his face. Good night, Maybelline, he whispered. Leroy closed his eyes. He thought very hard. His heart had been waiting for Maybelline to come along so that it could open wide and he could speak all the beautiful words that had been hiding inside of him. It was an amazing concept to consider, and the cowboy fell asleep considering it. Just a little reminder, so we have him outside right underneath Maybelline, sleeping at her feet. So that, my friends, is the end of the chapter. Let's take a little sneak peek. Chapter 6. Ooh, and I see that there's kind of this bubble around it. So that might be a clue that this is a thought or maybe even a dream. We'll have to tune in next time to see. Thanks, friends. Hope you're enjoying it.